So today we're excited to welcome you all to a very exciting speaker series event. So as many of you may know, there have been already several studies on the impact of yoga and meditation on mental and physical health, which have demonstrated beneficial effects. However, the potential molecular mechanisms and critical genes involved in this beneficial outcome have yet to be comprehensively elucidated. So we have a very exciting study, specifically a study that looks at the impacts of meditation on immunity. And today we have with us the primary investigator of this one study, Dr. Vijayendran Chandran, who will be discussing his study that identified and characterized the transcriptional program associated with advanced meditation practice. So a little bit about our speaker today. Dr. Vijayendran Chandran is an assistant professor in the Department of Pediatrics and Neuroscience in the School of Medicine at the University of Florida. He received his Ph.D. and postdoctoral at the University of Bielefeld, studying genome research and bioinformatics. And he's also studied neurobiology for his postdoctoral degree at the University of California, LA. He has published research in these areas, and his most recent study finding on meditation and gene expression has been a global hit and was featured in over 25 magazines worldwide, including in France, Vietnam, Germany, and Brazil. Dr. Chandran's long-term research interests involve the identification of the molecular mechanism responsible for neuronal degeneration and neural repair. And currently he serves as a review editor for Frontiers in Neuroscience Journal and as a member of the American Neurology Society of Neuroscience. And then interviewing Dr. Chandran today so we can uncover more about his work and the underpinnings of this research is our very own Dr. Maria Gonçalves. Maria has a background in chemistry and molecular biology and holds a PhD degree in neuropsychiatry from the Federal University of Sao Paulo in Brazil. She is currently a postdoctoral research fellow here at Sadhguru Center and is interested in the effects of meditation practice in the neuroimmune and psychological responses in the context of gut-brain diseases. So Maria, please take it away. We're really excited to hear more about Dr. Chandran's groundbreaking research.
Thank you, Tulsi, for the introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. So today we're going to talk about the research conducted by Dr. Chandran and colleagues in the field of meditation and its effect on the immune system. So briefly introducing the study, Dr. Chandran's work focused on providing a comparative analysis of gene expression, followed by a comprehensive system biology analysis. For that, the study team collected blood samples of 106 participants of the Advanced Inner Engineering Meditation Program offered by Isha Foundation. And the authors found that 220 genes directly associated with the immune system had their expression positively impacted by the program retreat, suggesting an improvement on the participants' immunity. And interestingly, similar genes have their expression affected by diseases such as multiple sclerosis and COVID-19. Thus, the authors suggested that meditation practice might be beneficial to patients with compromised immune responses. So this work, entitled Large-Scale Genomic Study Reveals Robust Activation of the Immune System Following Advanced Inner Engineering Meditation Retreat, was published by the end of 2021 at PNAS, one of the most prestigious and high-impact scientific journals. So I would like to welcome Dr. Chandran and thank you for joining us for this conversation.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for having me. So thank Tulsi for a great, nice introduction, and for all the organizers for having me. You guys can all hear me well, right?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Great to have you. Yeah, I'm excited to share our findings with you guys. Yeah, thank you.
So I would like to start asking you, Dr. Chandran, what exactly intrigued you to study the impact of meditation on the immune system?
Yeah, I mean, basically our lab is focused on neurobiology and, degenerative diseases, but this interest goes back 10 years back. My wife introduced to me something called inner engineering. So I was very skeptical like earlier on to take that, and so that was a 20 minutes meditative practice. So she told me, you just try it for a few days. If it works, keep it. If it doesn't work, just move on. So she pushed me actually to do that. So that's called, that time it was called inner engineering, and still it's a great tool for everybody from the Isha Foundation. So I tried that for 41 days. I found really a great benefit of using that tool. Then as a scientist, it intrigued me, like, what's happening really. My health improved, my focus improved, and everything, my relationships really improved well, and I was feeling really calm and focused for a long time. So that intrigued me, like, what's really happening within me by doing this. Then as a scientist, I went back and looked at all these literature. So most of the evidence out there was based on survey-based data. So I mean, for me, survey-based data was very subjective, right? So I was not convinced. And so what exactly inside, like a cell or in a body, what's happening, you need to know that to exactly tell this is what is happening, and that's the consequence what you're facing. So the interest went long back, and then we have it here. So that's kind of a personal interest, I would say, rather than something else. Yeah.
That's great. Super inspiring.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
So for this study, you investigated like 106 participants who went through the Samyama meditation retreat, right?
Yes.
And could you just explain briefly the principles of this practice specifically and what was expected from the participants during this study?
Oh, okay, let me share a screen probably for everybody.
Sure.
So can everybody see my screen? Yeah.
Yes.
Great. So this meditation, this is an advanced meditation offered by Isha Institute of Neuroscience. So the location where we did the study is in Tennessee. It's a beautiful place, and this is an advanced program which is offered, and this is quite intense program. So the pre-program requirement for this is you need to be 60 days before the program. The participants need to be on a vegan diet, and they shouldn't have any other stimulants like coffee, tea, drugs, and alcohol, cigarettes, and stuff like that. So I mean, and then they also have to do a preparatory daily practice, and those are the initial practices which they have offered, and this is in advance. So it's a very intense retreat, I would say. But why we chose this retreat to do research is because it's very tightly controlled. So imagine these participants, they remain silent for 8 days on go, and they are all in the same place. They meditate more than 10 hours a day, and they eat the same thing, and then they eat vegan meals, and they have a strict sleep pattern. So we know that if you sleep in different pattern, the gene expression would change, and if you eat different food, the gene expression would change, and different environment also, it has a deep impact in the gene expression. So, and that's why we chose this retreat, because it's tightly controlled. Yeah. So and this is the retreat we focused on, and we did this study. Yeah.
Great. We will get back to this vegan diet later, but for now,
Yeah.
So you then analyzed the differential expression of several genes on blood samples by RNA sequencing, right?
Yes.
So for our audience, could you just explain a little bit what does that mean exactly? What is a transcriptome analysis, and how is it relevant to understand human health and disease?
Yeah. So I mean, the method which we use to study the molecular mechanism, it's called RNA sequencing. It's a transcriptomics. So we use that to generate the data from the blood samples from the participants. So what that means is, like, you measure the gene products of an individual from before treatment, after treatment, or before meditation, after meditation. It's basically you quantify the levels of genes. Right? So we know that, like, can you guys see my cursor too? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So I mean, most of us, we know that we have more than 37 trillion cells in our body, right? And each cell consists of like around 23 pairs of chromosomes, and these chromosomes consist of like approximately 25 to 30,000 genes, which codes for proteins, which is called the coding RNA, or there are non-coding RNA, which plays a huge role in gene regulation. So this is possible when we measured the coding and the non-coding RNA, which by using a method called RNA sequencing. So what you do is, like, you at one time point in a snapshot, we take blood samples and we measure all the genes at once. So that means, to put it in simple terms, you take you measure all the ingredients of any kind of, now it's blood, or any kind of a solution. For example, you give me a soup and I could measure all the ingredients in it and say this is why the soup tastes good or bad, right? Something like that. So by using this methodology, we measured approximately 28,000 genes we quantified from one sample, from one individual, from one time point. Imagine we did around 106 individuals, 308 samples. It's a big time, big data out there. And so, so that's how we measured. So at one go, you can measure all the genes by using this technology. And since this technology produces a lot of data, and we utilize systems biology approach to analyze the data. So I won't go in detail about the methodology, which is very technical, but you can look into this manuscript for details. But to put it in a nutshell, in very common terms, imagine now you have 28 genes you measure, right? So you can group those genes based on the expression, for example, right? So expression means if it goes high, and if different genes goes together, I can group them together. So now I'm showing here 3 different groups: group A, group B, group C, and 3 genes, for example. The expression level of group A, they are similar, so I'm going to combine them together. And group B, these genes, 3 genes, have the similar expression, so I can group them in another group. So you can do this like repeatedly many times, and then you can have a group of genes which has similar expression. Like, imagine before meditation and after meditation. So you take those groups and you go and look into those genes and see what are those genes doing. Like, do they have the same function? And then you can go and characterize, okay, these genes, for example, involved in the immune systems, are going high after meditation, and that's why this is happening. So you can make several conclusions based on this kind of analysis when you have big data. Yeah.
Great. So from that chart from you, we can think about when we get samples from the blood, we probably have different cell types. We have like red cells, white cells, platelets. So, and they have different genes expression. So doesn't it make a difference when you are analyzing a full transcriptome, or how did you address that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the thing is, so now, I mean, these days, like, there's advanced technology like single cell sequencing. You can go and sequence each cell types within blood, for example. So here we are doing bulk sequencing. But, that means you take the blood and you measure all the genes regardless of whichever cell types you have. So, but, theoretically, you can go back, and we did something called cell deconvolution. What it means that you can go and look at those signatures and see which signature is coming from which cell types, and you can normalize that. So I mean, that would get into more technical, but I would say theoretically we did that to eliminate any cell type specific gene expression changes. So and when we looked at before meditation and after meditation, we see there's no big difference in cell types. So the the blood samples, when you collected before the meditation, after the meditation, had equal proportion of cell types. And if there is slight difference, we normalize that, so the signature is coming from the bulk sample, not from one cell type. Yeah, I hope I answered that question. Yeah.
Yes, that's great.
Yeah.
So now let's just talk a little bit about the most relevant finding of your study, which is exactly the impact of meditation on the immune system itself, right?
Yeah.
So how did you figure out that those differentially expressed genes, the 200 that you found, were associated with the immune system, and what were your main findings on this regard? And also, just if you could answer as well, if there was any specific immune pathway that stood out as the most relevant one, because we know the immune system has different ways of action. So
yeah, okay. So let me okay, so you mean you're a little forward. So this analysis, when we started this, we didn't assume that we will see the immune system genes will be high or low, right? So the beauty of this kind of study is unbiased. What do you mean by that? Is like, you don't assume anything, you just measure all the 8 genes which is available, and then you allow the data to tell what do you find, right? So basically you throw everything, all the genes, you measure everything, and then you'll see, you allow the data to tell what's happening, right? And so let me show, or let me go and just briefly talk about the study we did and what did we find. So of course that's good, like you asked. So we took the blood samples from like around 388 people, 192 male and 196 female, like sexes, or like mostly even, and we analyzed them in 4 time points: time point 1, 2, 3, and 4. The time point 1 was 6 weeks before the retreat. The time point 2 was just before the retreat. We took another blood samples from them. And then time point 3 was immediately after the retreat. That's like 8 days after the retreat. And time point 4 was like basically after 3 months of the retreat. And then we analyzed the gene expression. So this panel shows you top genes, which is like, red means each row represents a gene, and each column represents a sample, for example. So the red means the expression of those genes are high. The blue means they are low in expression, right? If you see that first, you can see there are several genes which are high in T3. That means immediately after the retreat. There are several genes are also high in T4. So that's 3 months after the retreat. So this suggests that there is a short-term effect as well as long-term effect after meditation. So this is like, just a snapshot what we did. In terms of, I mean, you asked me a question like, how did you find the immune system, right? So we didn't assume it. We didn't assume that the immune system will go high or not. This is unbiased. So based on all the data, what I've shown you, 388 samples, we got like around 17 million data points, right? It's a big data. And then we did a lot of bioinformatic analysis, and we identify a meditation specific network. So what I'm showing here is a meditation specific network. And in this network, each node, each round bulb here represents a gene which has a function, right? And if it's red in color, that means those genes are going high after meditation. If it's blue, that means the genes are, the genes are like low in expression. So we observed, like, strikingly, the oxidative stress deoxygenation genes, those were low in these participants after meditation. Cell cycle was low. But we also found like 220 genes directly associated with immune response, which included 68 genes related to interferon, was also upregulated. That means they're going high after meditation. So this is basically, you're taking all the genes and you're just seeing what it does actually. And that's what we observe. And specifically, you asked me, is there any signaling pathway? So here we've found the interferon signaling pathway, which as a driver. So this network shows you 24 critical drivers that are directly involved in interferon signaling. So interferon signaling is a pathway which is responsible. This is the first time a defense mechanism. If you are infected with a virus, the interferon systems will go immediately to defend you. And even its defense against cancer cells, people have shown that. And so that's what exactly we found here. Like 24 driver genes are directly related to interferons where upregulated after meditation. So you see if it's red, that means they are highly expressed. If it's blue, it's low expressed. We don't see any genes which are going the other way. So most of these genes are elevated after meditation, which is striking. I mean, I've analyzed a lot of data. We didn't see this kind of changes anywhere, like where all those genes involved in interference going in one direction. So I hope I answer that question. Yeah.
Yes, that's amazing. You
Sure.
can see a lot of changes.
Yeah, right.
So in your study, you also analyzed the transcriptome of other cohorts, right? Other group of people, such as COVID-19 and multiple sclerosis patients.
Yeah.
And you observed that similar genes were altered as well, right?
Yes.
So this suggests that meditation could be used as a complementary approach to address maybe inflammatory pattern on those conditions. But in your study, you did not analyze those patients directly, right?
Yeah.
So in terms of absolute magnitude of biological changes, all of this that you were observing in your study, how powerful do you expect that a meditative practice would be towards reducing inflammation or improving the immune response in those conditions?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So, of course, we didn't measure directly the samples from COVID patients as well as the multiple sclerosis patients. But the beauty of these kind of study is, so the data are publicly available, right? So they have, for example, people have studied COVID patients using the same technology, the same data analysis, the same stuff. So you can compare their data with your data and see what's happening. So that's the beauty. Like, scientists can share data, they can reanalyze the data, they can do this. So what we did was, like, at that time when we did this analysis, we were we were surprised to see such a increase in the immune system by doing this meditative technique. So what we did was, like, at that time, we all were sitting at home in pandemic, and there were like 20 or 40 different clinical trials were going on for COVID patients. And we also know that, severe COVID patients have dysfunctional interferon signaling genes. So that's a well-known mechanism. Several studies from several investigators have shown that severe patients of COVID patients, they have a defect or dysfunctional interferon signaling genes. So that allowed us to compare that. So what we did was, so we took the hallmark interferon genes, which is alpha and gamma response genes, and we looked at the meditation, that is before meditation, after meditation. So as I told you previously, these are all the genes involved in the interferon signaling. So if it's red in color, that means they are highly expressed. If it's green, or if it's blue, they are low expressed. You can see most of the genes after meditation, they are highly expressed. Right now, the beauty of the study is, like, you can take the same genes and look at it in patients which are affected with mild COVID. And then you can also map on to severe COVID patients. You can see mild COVID patients who are not admitted to the ICU, you can see several genes around, like, 76% of these genes are upregulated after COVID, like in mild COVID patients. But if you look at the severe COVID-19 patients, only 31% genes are upregulated. You can see a lot of blue dots there. So that means those genes, which are very critical to fight the virus, are dysfunctional or low in severe COVID-19 patients. And the important message here is these genes are activated after meditation, right? So that's where the story comes here, because you have the same genes which are going high after meditation, but those genes specifically which are important to fight virus as well as cancer cells are lower in severe COVID-19 patients. So that's what we found here. And that point, I mean, imagine like right now, there are 40 different clinical studies out there for COVID patients as interferon therapy, right? So those clinical trials, what they're doing is like they're taking severe COVID patients and they're treating with interferon signaling proteins to increase their interferon signaling. So that is kind of being looked at one kind of intervention. So here we are showing the same genes which are involved in the important defense mechanism are activated after meditation, but not in severe COVID patients. So, I mean, of course, we didn't measure directly from the patients, but the data is all, but because somebody has already done that work, you don't want to repeat that, right? You can compare. So that's the beauty here.
Yeah, that's amazing. We can see very downregulation with the blue dots there during COVID, and we expect them to enhance with meditation, right?
Great.
So you also mentioned that the changes on gene expression for certain genes at least were sustained for at least 3 months, right? Up to your time point 4. And so thinking about this and all this COVID-19, for example, the severe one, or even maybe long COVID contest, do you think that this could be somehow interpreted as a possible future therapeutic approach for chronic diseases or for long-lasting conditions?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, So what we found is like, okay, let me put you in one slide forward here. So in this slide, so these are, for example, these top genes which are going high in the meditation, after meditation, you see they are not still elevated in time point 4, which is important. So, activation of immune system, your immune system is very vibrant, is very important. But if you're going to have a hyperimmune system for a very long time, it can be chronically damaged, right? You don't want your immune system to be always elevated for a long time, right? And so that's exactly what we are seeing here. So long-term elevation of the immune system is also not good. So we see a spike here, but there are other changes happening due to the meditation at time 4. So there we see there's a lot of kinases activity, but there's no functional group responsible for this. But there are individual genes doing their own thing, which are elevated at T4 also. So which is important. So in terms of, and imagine this is a very intense meditation, right? And so for now it's like, I mean, we can't expect 10 hours of per day anybody meditating that in regular basis. And we chose this just to see the effect. So in terms of, if you want to talk in terms of treatment to a specific disease, so, a new clinical trial study should be conducted. For example, if you think this method is working for multiple sclerosis or for COVID or for any disease which has weak immune system, you need to do a clinical trial, recruiting those patients, applying this method and showing exactly what's happening. Unless you do that, you can't say that it might, be beneficial for those patients. But here you're just comparing these data sets and showing, see, this is what is important, and this is what we are seeing here, and so that's one way to look at it. Yeah. So if you wanted to look at specific disease for depression or something like that, I mean, you need to do a clinical separate trial using this intervention and address that. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe we can even think about using this approach or different mind-body interventions to target specific gene expression changes. Do you think this could be possible when thinking about any precision individualized medicine?
Yeah, that's a great point. So you're thinking about like, different, I mean, so I mean, looking at the data, like every mind-body techniques and every meditation, mindfulness, I mean, most of the people who have done that, they've always given positive feedback about that. So definitely there's something happening there, right? And so to characterize, so for example, if we have, so if we redo this study, you don't have to do this whole gene expression analysis. Now you know these are the genes which are elevated. You can just focus on these genes and do a smaller study and show that, this technique is activating this technique is activating some, is not activating this. So you can tailor it, and that's how we see this study is as a foundation for this kind of a query. So now you have all the genes measured at once. Now you can cherry pick and say, okay, this is important for this intervention. If this technique, mind body intervention, is what is it doing it, like you can do that. So one important thing of what we found is, so if you have the enhanced immune activation, sometimes you can see the inflammatory genes also go high, which is not good. So this slide shows you even before meditation, after meditation, you don't see the inflammatory genes goes high. So again, red means high, blue means low, white means nothing happening, right? And so what I'm showing here is there is no inflammation genes are not going after meditation or before meditation. There's no big changes. But if you see the mild COVID and severe COVID patients, you see the same genes, the inflammatory genes, are really high after COVID. So what I'm showing here is, so these participants in this meditation retreat, they have a higher activity of the immune system without activating the inflammatory signals, which is very important, I would say. Right, that's what you want to have it. You don't want the inflammatory things to go high, and so exactly that's what's happening here. And if you have a viral infection or so, you tend to see the inflammatory genes go high, but here in the meditation group you don't see that. Specifically, it's only activating the immune system.
Yeah, so basically we don't want the body to be fighting all the time. We want this just to improve our immunity, right?
Exactly.
Great. So just getting back, you mentioned before about the vegan diet, that this could also change like our sleeping pattern, and the vegan diet could also change gene expression, right?
Yes.
So you didn't see much changes based on this in your study, right?
Yeah, that's true. So why, I mean, so we purposefully we wanted to conduct a study in this retreat because different diets, we clearly know that gene expression would change dramatically, right? So what you eat, imagine we are measuring the blood samples, right? It's peripheral. Immediately, if you pop in a chocolate or something, you can see that in your blood samples, right? So in terms of your glucose goes high and stuff like that, you can definitely see that. So, and that's why we suggested, like, I mean, the program is designed that they go into vegan diet 60 days before the program, right? So way before, right? And then in time point 3, I think so, we took a survey. 93% of the participants strictly followed the vegan diet, right? And the time point 1 was probably time point 1 was it was 6 weeks before the retreat. The 6 weeks before the retreat. And what we did was we first compared time point 1 and time point 2. We didn't see any gene expression changes, which is great, right? Because they're already on vegan diet, and when time point 1, and when you compare time point 1 and 2, we don't see any changes, and that's what exactly we wanted. And when we compare time point 2 and time point 3, those gene expression changes are strictly due to the meditation and not because of diet. And we have proved this in the paper. In detail, we have done the analysis. So I mean, of course, if they have not eaten vegan diet at time point 1, you would see different changes. But it looks like they follow the guidelines, and that's why we didn't see any changes between time point and time point 2, suggesting that diet didn't play a huge role. Not only diet, we also looked into, we eliminated the sex bias, like is there a difference because of males and females, and that didn't happen. And of course we looked at the cardiac changes, the cardiac rhythm changes. So because if you have irregular sleep, gene expression changes, we also took care of that. And so since they have a regular sleep pattern, and they also didn't see any changes looking into that actually. So that was, we eliminated all those analysis in that paper, and then we show, okay, what you're seeing here is primarily due to meditation. Maybe there's small effect which is negligible due to vegan diet, but majority it came from the retreat itself.
Yeah, 60 days before is a great time to balance your microbiome to responses, because this could be impacting the immune response as well, right?
Yeah,
so that's
definitely.
great. You have like a good control for that.
Yes.
And what do you consider the most challenging aspect of your study? And what are the next steps now? What do you think that we can use? How can we use your study to elucidate new mechanisms behind the immunomodulation and using meditation or other different mind-body interventions?
Yeah, I mean, so the challenge here is like, I mean, this technique is very intensive, number one, right? And you can't expect anybody to do this at home for such a long time, because we have other a responsibility to take care. So now, I mean, the next goal is to do some short time, like 15 or 20 minutes technique for longer duration. This is, imagine, but the cool thing about this is, okay, so I mean, probably, yeah, I missed this data which I wanted to show you guys. So this is about the MS patient, so I can come back to this. But yeah, I think so. I have those slides here. So yeah, what we did for, I mean, let me touch into this data, which is interesting piece. Then I can answer your question. Is that fine?
Yes, sure.
Yeah. So what we did was like, so this top panel here is the 24 meditation specific interferon driver genes, right? So those were elevated after meditation. So what we did is like, okay, let's look into other disease. We saw that in the COVID. Okay, what about the another disease, which we call, I mean, it's called as multiple sclerosis, because the first disease modifying therapy was the interferon treatment for these patients. So the MS patients, like, when they've been given interferon therapy, they will have very good outcome. So they have a very, I mean, they don't have any more cognitive loss, and people have shown that they don't have any relapse, and their progression is halted. So it's a very good treatment for multiple sclerosis. So what we did was, first is like, we compared those 24 driver genes which are elevated after meditation. When we compared the multiple sclerosis and their controls, we didn't see any changes of those interferon, which is expected, right? So these patients are not doing good, and the interferon signalings are bad, and so you don't see much changes, which is somewhere around white. Now, those patients who were treated with interferon therapy and no treatment, you see most of the patients have really high level of interferon genes, which are elevated here. So these are the same genes which are elevated after meditation also. So now I'm showing an example of two different diseases which are like, which have weakened immune system, right? And so probably, I mean, that's important. We are seeing that there are multiple diseases which is also having the same impact. And I'm just showing two pieces of data. So showing that probably these techniques can really help these patients. Yeah. And so I think so. Yeah, I think so. I mean, your question came like, can we do any mind body? Can we target different genes? Can we target different using different approaches? Definitely, but you need to do some kind of a clinical trial focusing on those patients and trying to address that. So
and eventually using other techniques as well, like the single cell, as you mentioned, that we can focus on specific pathways, right?
Yeah. So I mean, you can do that specifically focusing on single cell types, but I mean, more than technique, I would say conducting a trial focusing on the patients itself, right? So
Definitely.
imagine recruiting them and having them. Probably this kind of retreat is too intense for them, but there are 20 minutes practices. I mean, the current research which we are focusing is on doing a short time meditation for a longer duration, right? Because imagine this was just 8 days. But imagine you have a shorter duration, like something called inner engineering, which is 20 minutes practice. And if you do 20 minutes practice per day for probably for a month or 2 months, what do you see? Do you see the same immune system going high? And that is doable for everybody. 20 minutes in a day is not a big deal for many people. And measuring those gene expression changes and showing what changes are happening, and that would that one can go into mainstream to many audience, I would say.
Yeah, that sounds amazing, super inspiring.
Great.
So what would be your take-home message about
That's a great slides for that. So what a take-home message is, I mean, what I wanted to say, summarize it, is basically, I mean, the data what we have is kind of a foundation to study the meditation, so people can look into specific genes and focus on smaller studies, and you can tailor-made a different mind-body practices and do that. So I think so we have the foundation right now to look at. I mean, where do you look at? Right now we know the genes where to look at, and this also says that meditation can be used as a behavioral intervention, where imagine voluntarily you can activate your immune system without popping a pill, right? Without doing anything, you can activate your immune system by meditating, right? So that's the take-home message, I would say. And also these kind of mind-body practices can be used for several conditions which has very weak immune system with excessive inflammation. People can use that and see if it can improve. Definitely the field would more go in that approach, probably doing a specific clinical trials. And and with that, probably I would like to wind up before, and then probably Maria, I can get back to you for more questions. Before I just don't want to miss this. So I would like to acknowledge the Isha Institute of Science for allowing us to conduct the study, and all the volunteers. I mean imagine 300 and several participants collecting blood samples, and most of them, there were a lot of volunteers helping us to collect the blood samples, and all the authors, and especially Sendil Bala. So because the Indiana University helped us to collect the samples, and Bala was one of the investigators to put all of this together. So I would like to thank all the authors on the study, and of course my own lab. And with that, I would like to end, and Maria and others, I would like to take any questions if you guys have. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chandra. Was amazing presentation and conversation. So I think we can open now for audience questions, if that's okay for you.
Yeah, sure.
Maria, thank you so much for doing a wonderful conversation with Vijay. And Vijay, thank you so much for leading this important and landmark work, I think, for years to come. So I wanted to pick the brain of a couple of people in the audience. So one is Dr. Sadhguru Singh Khalsa, who has been a leading researcher at Harvard, especially in yoga for a long, long time. Sadhguru, if you're there, if you can just come on video and comment on this particular work.
Yes, I can certainly make some comments. This area of research is really sort of new to contemplative sciences research, and we're starting to see more and more of this use of molecular biological techniques to see how these contemplative practices are changing our functioning at the cellular and molecular level. And the beauty of these practices is they're extremely objective. and they're very powerful, and they're at the cutting edge of modern scientific technology. Some of the earliest work was done at the Benson Henry Institute for Mind-Body Medicine, perhaps one of the first studies back in 2008 that looked at gene expression for some of these contemplative practices. But I think all of the contemplative traditions are now starting to do research on showing these changes in gene expression. And not surprisingly, what's really important as well is that the changes in the genes we're seeing are in those functions that we've seen behavioral changes in. So we know that through behavioral studies and biochemical studies, we've seen changes in improvements in inflammation, in immune function, in stress regulation pathways, emotion regulation pathways, and the gene expression changes are consistent with those. So this is mounting to be a very nice story that's all interlocked. And as I say, these techniques, along with the neuroimaging techniques, which are also really powerful now, we're starting to really make huge advances in our understanding of the cellular, molecular biology, as well as the neuroscience of these practices. So it's a very exciting time.
Thank you so much, Sadhguru.
Congratulations on getting your paper published in such a strong journal. That's also very important for the field.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sadhguru, for that comment. And they also see Dr. Raj Kannan from Mayo Clinic. Is it right? So Raj, can you comment on this? I won't say anything more than that, but if you can comment on the article and its importance.
Yeah, no, first of all, congratulations to the team for this wonderful paper. This definitely brings home a lot of things that we all have been thinking about for a long time, particularly, those, well, I'm not a, sort of researcher in this sphere, but I guess for all those researchers who are working in the mind-body space, immune system, how immune system is regulated at the systemic level is a big question, and nothing better than sampling blood. As some book says, life is in blood. So the sampling blood that basically goes to every organ, samples all the good and bad that is happening in every decaying or sort of healthy tissues, and brings that information. It really sort of presents itself in a wonderful manner, and that's probably the keys to this successful paper, that it's the blood that was sampled for assessing overall alterations in the immune system. Now, this is also the study to me opens sort of a floodgate of how one can start investigating, because as Vijay pointed out, that now what genes to go after. You don't have to, because this is expensive, this is labor intense, it requires a lot of, sort of computational power to do this type of work, and it's not practical especially if you want to expand it and do clinical trials, or sort of do large sort of studies. It's better to do a targeted panel of genes that have come out of this study. But before extending it to other investigations, it's very important to compare the panel of genes that are very important and have come out of this study with another set of meditation practice, and see whether actually they hold true, or is every type of meditation really throwing different combination, maybe redundant in biological function, but sort of different genes that can also do the same. And in that case, the spectrum of genes that needs to be included in the panel for any targeted sort of approach would be wider. But if it is, therefore the question is, are these genes Samyama specific or meditation in general specific? And I just want to ask one question to Vijay. Samyama is quite advanced practice, isn't it? So, folks who are enrolling into this kind of retreat, they're probably already doing some level of practice on a daily basis.
Yes.
So how does that transition happen? Because the gene expression is just stellar. It just lights up. The minute they start Samyama, something really, something really happens. We don't know exactly the timeline, like for individuals, how this sort of transition happens when these genes come up for every person. Is it on the day 1 or day 2? Is it instant, or is it actually kind of a cumulative effect? We don't know, because you really have not collected blood every day. I don't think that would be a desirable for meditation practitioners. But yeah, if you can shed some light on that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. The thing is, I mean, of course, they have prerequisites of other programs they've done before, and that's why we included 2 time points, right, before the retreat per se. So time point 1 and time point 2, where they've not introduced to Samyama. Some participants have already done Samyama, but still, like majority of the participants there, they have not gone through. They don't know what's going to happen, like in the retreat per se. So when you compare time point 1 and time point 2, basically there's nothing happening there, right? So, and only compare time point 2 and 3, it happens. So, I mean, of course, to answer your question, if we do need to do a time course, which is, it would be impossible, because, I mean, yeah, that the structure of that program won't allow us to do that. So it's basically before you and after, but we don't know exactly what happens, when happens. I mean, maybe it's a cumulative effect, but you have to remember, it's a very short time point. It's just 8 days. It's not like, there's some research out there practicing this technique for years, 1 year, 3 years, 10 years, and they are there, and then they're seeing a cumulative effect. And relative to those studies and those findings, this is a very short time point. And maybe now we are looking at doing something short for a long time. Probably for that you can do some time course and see what that happens. Is it a cumulative, or it's whether it's gradually increasing? So we can answer that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kannan and Vijay, for that. And
Sure.
I just want to summarize a lot of questions there in the chat box. People are asking, everybody cannot do Samyama. I think we addressed it already. So we're trying to see whether we can do this in what Vijay pointed out, like the 20-minute meditation practice that can be done over 4 to 8 weeks, whether we see at least similar changes, to what degree, etc. We're trying to design a study, and hopefully we can engage Vijay on that analysis as well. Tracy had asked, Tracy Chang, who's one of our psychologists from the Rutgers University, who had done a number of simple studies with simple meditation processes such as Upa Yoga, especially in college students, and recently they were all published. So she wanted to know, have you, in your literature search, have you seen such changes in any other types of meditation related to what Dr. Kannan was asking? Vijay?
Yeah, I mean, there are gene expression studies previously published, but in different techniques. Of course, they found some changes, but I mean, this is one of the largest study yet published with so many samples and so many time points, and this is one of the biggest studies yet doing RNA sequencing in so many patients. So many meditators. So that point taken, and there are several papers out there measuring biomarkers, or related to immune system, related to showing that it is elevated, which is in agreement with what we find here. So in terms of the similar dramatic changes of immune system, which other techniques have followed, I have not seen any publication out there. That was the motivation, yeah, to do the study. Yeah.
Great. Before we go on to the other questions, I think Tulsi had some announcements to make before we wrap up some other questions there. I know this is an important study, and go ahead, Tulsi.
I just wanted to thank everyone for coming here today. In case people do need to leave on the dot at 5 o'clock, I just thought I'll share an invitation that we'd like to extend from Sadhguru Center to all of you, our wonderful global community, to continue to join us, to engage in these meaningful conversations in the months to come. If you enjoyed this engaging talk today, we invite you to join us next month for a panel on autism awareness that we'll be launching in April for Autism Awareness Month. And in May, we'll be talking and looking at the intersection of consciousness and astronomy. And then in June, we hope to discuss some more on integrative medicine and mind-body modalities. And if you want to join us for these future events, an easy way is to follow us on Eventbrite. So many of you registered for this event here through that website, and we have a page we'll be adding more of our future events to, and you can just follow us on Eventbrite. And since some of us are joining us here for the first time and don't know about some of the research that has already been done and may be interested to learn more, I wanted to share this past year was our first year in existence at Sadhguru Center, and we had a pretty groundbreaking first year in terms of our research, where we talked about we sort of launched more than 50 research studies in 42 areas of collaboration. We partnered with 33 institutions globally. We had 12 publications, and we talked and discussed and collaborated and partnered with over 67 research collaborators, which is really wonderful. And we feel excited to continue this work this year. And in terms of our recent publications, and we have some of our collaborators here on this call with us, so I wanted to point out that we have, in the past few months, published a variety of studies showcasing the impacts of yoga and meditation programs, from everything from a 15-minute meditation to this 8-day silent meditation advanced retreat. And we've looked at the impacts on a variety of different communities, including looking at the impacts on mental health and well-being in corporate professionals, in undergraduate students, and even healthcare professionals. And we look forward for more to come. And all of these links to these publications will soon be available on our website. And then finally, we also, and alongside our research, offer programs that we curate, incorporating some of these evidence-based wellness tools and yoga and meditation practices, specifically for particular patient populations that are in high need. So, for example, our current programs include a long COVID recovery program that we've launched at our hospital, where we've seen more than 250 patients have already been referred to this program. And then we're just about to launch a mental health program for Parkinson's disease patients. So if you are experiencing any long COVID symptoms or know someone who is suffering from this, you can actually refer to this program yourself or your friend. And Nasha will be adding a link to that program in the chat. So this is something that is available free of cost and online, and you can share it with friends and family. And in the future, we hope to be designing programs for these various communities, including pregnant women, cancer recovery, dizzy patients, and those with cognitive neurology disorders. And last but not least, please do stay in touch with us. We look forward to engaging with you on social media. You can connect with our director, Dr. Bala Subramaniam, on Twitter as well as on LinkedIn. The links to these social media profiles will be also put in the chat. Please stay in touch with us. And this is also a wonderful way to hear about any upcoming events and programs. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Please do continue to connect with us and join us for future programs. There'll be more ways that you can talk to us and engage with us linked in the chat as well. And we look forward to hearing from you. And for those of you who have to kick off for the rest of the evening, thank you. And we'll get back to some of the really interesting questions I know some people have been waiting to ask.
Right. So I just wanted to, there are some more questions that filled up, Vijay. So Nidhi from California, I think. So she's asking, what RNA did you study? Was it mRNA or is it total RNA?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically total RNA. We do that, but we take the mRNA and do, in terms of, which includes a long coding RNA also and protein coding RNA also. So it's basically everything, yeah.
The other question is, you said the data basically led you to the findings, right? So it's important to have the systems biology expertise that you have. Is there anything signals for neurological diseases? You did mention multiple sclerosis, but is there anything else for milder forms such as cognitive impairments, which are much more commonly experienced by several people?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the one of the slides which I showed, which has many different pathways are dysregulated or activated or suppressed due to this intervention. So the immune system was the one which was showing high, but it's not just the immune system. There are several other pathways which are also altered due to this technique, right, which has a cell cycle, which has the detox and stuff like that. So, and that's why I was always saying that this is kind of a foundation. So people can always go and look back into the data. If you have a specific gene of interest with malignancy or some kind of other stuff, you can always look into that genes. You can screen and look. So with this intervention, if those genes are changing or not, right? So it can be done for any, if you have a certain neurological disease gene of interest, you can go and take those gene of interest and look the gene expression changes happening. So, you know, you can do that like for any kind of comparison. So I would encourage people to go and do that. So because the data is publicly available, anybody can look into that. Or if you have a gene of interest, which is of your favorite, if you want me to look at it, just send me, I can look in for you guys. Yeah.
Is there anyone else who has any other questions to Vijay? So I also wanted to plug in here that, you know, we at the center, we're trying to connect people who have a specific expertise in any area, whether it is, you know, what Vijay has done. If you have expertise in neuroimaging or something else, we can connect. And then the strength of this is, you know, there are people who follow Sadhguru and his teaching. So similarly, there are probably other schools where we can bring in a number of meditators to actually give in their time and also their samples. I think the crux of this whole study was there were two people. One is Sadhguru for offering this program, and two, the meditators themselves who actually gave their blood samples at all time points. And that is such an intense process of collection. We're deeply grateful to both of them because everything else is important, but these two are, in my head, I think they're very, very important to give, sitting at home and then volunteers going, collecting the samples and centrifuging it and sending it's no easy job. So, and also for Senthil to think about all this and fund this whole study and keeping the samples and generously giving it to others for investigating.
Dr. Bala, it seems we have a question from the community here. Mandira Sareen, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, am I unmuted?
Yes,
we can hear you.
All right, well, thank you so much, Dr. Chandran, and also the center for hosting these events. I'm not a medical in the medical field. My background is in architecture. I've studied sacred architecture and fabrication at master's level, but I did go through the Samyama program and also, you know, the 60-day prep. I happened to be at Isha Yoga Center doing the Sadhana Pada program in 2019 and 2020. Did Samyama there, you know, and certainly have noticed the difference. My question is, did you say that your research stated that the vegan diet didn't have so much of an impact as the meditation itself? I wasn't quite clear on that. I just wanted to understand that.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so let me just step one step back, right? So we know clearly diet would change your gene expression. No question about it. People have already shown it. You change your diet, you would see different gene expression changes. So whether it's vegan diet or any Mediterranean diet or any kind of diet, it would change your gene expression, right? So for this program, so all the participants 60 days back before they were onto vegan diet, right? And so we that, and then 5 weeks before the program, we collected the blood samples, T1 and T2, right? And we compared, there's no changes because they're already in vegan diet, right? There's the time point 1 and time point 2, both of them, they were on the vegan diet, right? So you basically, you're seeing like the same samples twice, kind of, I mean, to make it clear, right? So if they would have had a different diet in time point 1 and a vegan diet in time point 2, maybe there would have been a lot of changes. You see what I'm trying to say? So time point 1, so we did this because you wanted to find the changes which are primarily coming from the practice, the meditation practice, and not from the diet, right? And so we wanted to identify that. So that's why time point 1 and time point 2, they both were on vegan. And then if you compare time point 1 and 2, we didn't see any big changes, right? Then you compare time point 2 and time point 3, where they were introduced to this 8 days meditation program. You see a huge spike of different gene expression changes. So yeah, so it's what we are trying to show in that paper, and we proved is the changes what we are seeing here is predominantly by meditation. Yeah, I hope I answered that question, or am I clear?
Yeah. So Mandira, from my side, I think I'm just thinking of it this in a very simplistic way, right? They do complex analysis. For us, things like, many people ask these questions, and the next questioner is going to ask about dancing, etc. So I feel like the amount of changes that you would probably see with exercise, diet, etc., may be there, but not to the level that we have seen with Samyama. In simple terms, I think that is probably the take-home message. So Alka, I think you have a question. Do you want to come on, unmute yourself and ask?
Yes, I think I was asking the same question. I was just out of curiosity. Since this was the first large-scale study regarding the gene expression, but were any studies, maybe not gene expression, comparing meditation to other non-pharmacological methods like CBT, exercise, just to answer the people who might not be amenable to meditation, but who are like doing already things like exercising or have other forms of meditation like dance or music.
Yeah, that's a great point. In one part of the paper, we also compared it with the exercise regime. There was like a previous study which people they have shown that the immune system can be activated after doing intensive exercise too. Right, that's already published. So we took that data, we compared. I mean, there's one part of the paper somewhere we compared both of them. It's a supplemental data, I think. So when you compare the pattern, the gene changes after exercise and the gene changes after meditation, they are totally different, right? So we don't see that what's happening in the exercise is also as happening in the meditation practice. So I think so. There's one part in the supplemental which we address this. Yeah.
So these are just that's last question.
Sure. Go ahead. Yeah.
So you said that the genes are different, but so do you think that meditation is superior with respect to these genes, like in terms of infection or inflammation?
Sorry. I mean, the second part.
You're not very audible, Alka.
Yeah, go ahead.
So these genes are not comparable.
Yes.
So we can't say for sure that meditation is superior in terms of fighting infection or inflammation.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically when you can't say which is better and stuff like that. But what we are seeing here is we are seeing the immune system is activated, but the inflammation is not activated in this. That we clearly show. But in the exercise, and we have seen that both of them going in the same direction. Like, I mean, because that was a very intensive exercise regime, I think so. That paper, that was the data which was available publicly. We analyzed that and we compared that. We saw that some of the inflammatory genes were also elevated after doing intensive exercise, right? And so, I think so. One of the reviewers asked, we compared that, but I think so. I would suggest, like, if you're curious, please check the supplemental. So it might give you more answers than what I can give right now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point, because the supplement has a lot more information because there's a lot of response to the reviewers. The same questions they're all asking.
Yes.
Looks like we have no more questions.
Hello?
Oh, somebody.
Yes, if somebody.
Yes, I'm Harsha.
Yes, go ahead, Harsha.
I have one question that meditation, the Samyama meditation is just complete samadhi level meditation, but other meditation is not samadhi level meditation. What is the difference between in that genes which is not samadhi level meditation and which is Samyama is only samadhi level meditation? So there are so many different in genes. So do you have that experience? Anything?
One thing what I can say is, like, we are not trained meditative teachers. So we can't talk more about the technique. So what we have done is, like, we just analyzed this meditation technique, and we took that and Bala, maybe you can comment more about this. So from my point, all I can say is that I can't comment upon the technique because it was not me.
Yes, so the scientific world for meditation,
Yeah.
they generalize it in a way that we can all talk the same language. Forget about the samadhi, etc. But they talk about open awareness, single point, loving kindness, etc. This common principles of meditation. So here you're looking at a single point focus as the scientific way of talking about this as a major component in the Samyama program. But there's also being given to you face-to-face by a realized master, which is a component that cannot be measured by any way, right? So those are all the things which goes beyond our level of expertise to say what happens with what levels. But we don't have any other published data to compare X versus Y. And that's what several people commented. It'll be nice to have other types of meditation and seeing whether we are actually seeing these levels of changes with them also. And Dr. Kannan actually started with that comment. So something to be studied, hopefully if one of you who is in this audience is capable of donating something to our center, we can launch these kinds of studies. And I must congratulate Vijay because everything that he has done here was all from his own funding, which is not a simple task. We are talking millions of dollars for this entire study. A lot of funding coming from Senthil, Vijay, and as we talked about. So I can't imagine this being done without this generous funding from these individuals themselves.
Sure.
Okay, and another question I have that Sadhguru has two different practice. One is Sambhavi meditations, inner engineering Sambhavi, and another one is the Sakti Chalan Kriya. And compared to that, also two different techniques has different effect on your body.
Right, I just want to tell you that this school is a very broad school of yoga. That is a great, there are a few schools like that which can give you from A to Z, right? You tell me how much time you have and how much interest you have. You can just do grazing by doing 5-10 minutes every day, or you can get into it, like somebody commented in the chat box, to do 4 to 5 hours of meditation, staying outside the ashram. So there's a wide variety of things. I don't think we can just simply go from this angle of what we found and then talking about the meditation itself. They probably have a wholesome effect other than what we are just talking, like a complete overall of mind, body, energy, emotions. The tools that we have will not do justice in talking about them in any particular way. Simply in this particular experiment, both Shakti Chalana Kriya and Shambhavi were part of the preparatory practices for 60 days. So they were being done. In addition to that, we had other things that were taught during that 7 or 8 day retreat. So with the 60-day already, Vijay expanded very clearly that between time point 1 and time point 2, where they were doing these practices on everyday basis, there was not a lot of difference between T2 and T1. Whereas T3, which is post the 7-day retreat, you actually saw a huge change. So yes, with Shambhavi and Shakti Chalana Kriya, probably you'll see some other changes. Again, those are all things that need to be studied with generous funding from people such as yourself.
Dr. Chandran and Dr. Bala, we have one more question from an audience member named Chris. Chris, you can go ahead and speak.
Oh, thank you. I'm curious if you have any follow-up studies in mind, like looking at things at a biochemical level to see what's being regulated, how. Are there any particular genes or pathways that really stood out to you as particularly interesting in this data set?
I mean, Bala, do you want to answer? Or,
Yeah, so as we commented already that we have a large set of blood that is collected, and already they have done soma scan or soma logic analysis. Soma logic analysis for each blood sample is about 5,000 biomarkers are expressed. And so that has been analyzed, and so that is being now looked at by a couple of people, Tovia Lieberman from BADMC and Lint, and probably we'll also get back to Vijay once we have some direction there. So yes, there are follow-up studies that are being planned at the biochemical level.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. I think thank you so much for everyone for coming today and sharing your thoughts, specifically Vijay, Dr. Kannan, and Sadhbir, and so many of you giving your time. And we're hoping that we'll do much more important original work in our future endeavors, with many of you acting as our collaborators, and hoping to draw more people into meditation, because it's very much needed. And I think once you get into it, you probably don't need any of the studies, because experience is what is going to take you further and keep doing it on a daily basis. From our experience, only thing I can share with you is compliance is very important in whatever practice that you choose, and do it regularly in order to get the maximum benefits. It's not something that you do for, like Sadhguru comments, like a weekend yogi and just get away from it. Just take something, stick to it, and then you'll realize its benefits. Thank you so much again for everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for you. And we have commented already that this has been published in so many outlets. So it's just really wonderful.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Have a nice evening, everyone. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.